Hey, Naperville, one of the big questions on every home buyer's mind is how much do I need to put down when I'm purchasing a house? Whether you're a first-time home buyer or maybe this is your second or third purchase, that question comes up a lot and they want to know, how does it affect my payment? How does it affect PMI? Well, Todd and I are going to answer all those questions and more up next on this week's edition of the Naperville Real Estate Weekly Market Update.
Owning a home in Naperville is about living a great life today and investing in a secure tomorrow. On this show, we're going to give you the tools to do both. Welcome to the Naperville Real Estate Weekly Market Update.
What's going on, Naperville? I'm Chris Grano with Keller Williams, and alongside me is my co-host, Todd Gosden with Compass Mortgage. Todd, happy Memorial Day post-week here. How was your weekend?
Geez, is that a new holiday post week? I like that.
Post week, yeah. You might as well, right? I remember back in the day when I worked at 9 to 5, and you pretty much took that long holiday weekend with you into the week anyway, right? So
well, it's like,
yeah.
Listen, we're 6 months from Christmas and winter again, so let's enjoy it where we can.
That's right. That's right. But we talked a little bit offline. I had a fun weekend, a little bit of time with some friends. I was with friends while some of my family was with other families, so we were a little bit split, but still got to experience some relaxation for the first time in a long time. So I'm not complaining. But what I was curious to see was how the holiday weekend was going to affect our local real estate market, because it typically does have a little bit of effect, but this has been such a strange winter and spring because of the way that, we've just been rolling downhill constantly since the end of last summer. And I was curious to see if we were going to see a little bit of a leveling out, and we did. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. But as I teased in the beginning of the show, we're going to talk today a little bit about down payments. And I know this is something you have conversations with home buyers about every single day.
Yes, indeed.
And it's complex. And so we're going to touch on a few things. You're going to give us some context. And then maybe next week we can come back with a few actual real world number examples to give people a better idea.
That'd be great.
Awesome. All right. So let's take a look at the numbers real quick. And what I'm talking about in this little leveling out is going to be in this week's activity. You're going to see that. So when we look at activity in Naperville real estate, last week we had 127 new listings. Now, we didn't have many less new listings this week, so homeowners still put their homes on the market. So we had 122 new listings, still, good momentum there. What we did finally see for the first time in months was a little bit of a break in the buyer activity. And so we went from an average of around 100 homes under contract, 112 last week under contract, to only 81 homes under contract this week. So that was actually almost a 30% decrease week over week. And I mean, it's pretty simple, I think, Todd, right? People finally said, let's get out there and enjoy the holiday weekend. The weather was gorgeous. And, I think our world is finally opening up a little bit.
Correct. Yeah, there's no question. I think people were ready to get out and spend some outdoor times, have some nice weather. The weather was beautiful, but everybody just the freedom. A year ago, there was not a whole lot of freedom going on, and the streets were pretty bare at that point in time. So it's nice to see everybody out socializing again. That's for sure.
Yeah, that felt good. I was at a couple of gatherings this weekend, and boy, it feels good for things to get back to normal. So, that's actually good news for folks who are out there shopping, because, with a little bit of slowdown, if you were looking this weekend, you might have had a little bit less competition with other buyers. So good for you guys if you scoop something up. We will see how long that trend continues, and if we rebound pretty quickly here coming into this next weekend. So we'll have an update on that for you next week. When it comes to the pace of sales, so the inventory, believe it or not, that's actually down across the board. So even though we saw less homes go under contract this week than the previous week, we have gone down in our pace of sale in every single price bracket that we look at: under 500, 500 to 750, 750 to $1 million, and then $1 million plus. And for the first time all year, that 500 to 750 is under 2 months of inventory. So that still suggests a really strong seller's market. So again, for those of you who have maybe just been waiting for COVID restrictions to relax or whatever, it's still a great time to sell. So don't be afraid, talk to whoever you need to get things moving, and and let's have a conversation on what your home might be worth in this hot market. So Todd, let's talk then about our topic for this week, which is how much do I put down when I'm buying a house? And I'll just address, and I'm sure you have this conversation with buyers every day, but I think the biggest myth, and a lot of our folks who are homeowners now, they probably know this, right? They've been through this once before, but for the first time home buyers, they may have been heard or been told by their family or friends or TV shows or whatever, well, gosh, I've got to put 20% down, or I've got to put 10 or 15% down. And man, there's just not an opportunity for me until I've saved up 20, 30, 40, 50, $60,000. And I'm just going to dispel that myth right away. And that's just not true, right?
No, not at all. I mean, think about this. I mean, when you're looking to buy a house, there are so many circumstances, Chris, that come into play. It always is interesting is that no one person is equal to someone else. Whether it's credit score, whether it's assets, whether it's debt to income, whether it's this, whether it's that, there's 18 different factors that can typically go into purchasing a home. And people don't realize that interest rates could be different from a condo to a townhouse to a single family home. There's so many differences that go into it. There is no one person that fits into a perfect mold. Everybody has their own mold. And then when you start thinking about things like, okay, well, I want to buy and then I want to renovate. Well, okay, this is where you come into play then, Chris, is how much are we going to have to put down for you to actually win, number one, in a market where there's 10, 12, 13, 15 offers? That's a big question mark. But then the other question mark is maybe you do put down less so you have the dollars to do your renovation or DIY projects. So there's another side of it. But this is a market where I have never seen anything like this because there has nothing been more important than the partnerships that you align yourself with and the relationship between two people like you and I to come together and collaborate of how to get them the right information to get them into the house they want. So they're not trying this 10 or 12 times.
Yeah, that's a great point. And those conversations cannot be, I can't, overemphasize how important those early conversations are.
Right.
Because, I can tell you, I've gotten down the line with buyers before and thought I dug, deep enough on some of those conversations. And then it'll come out later, well, we have access to this or we have this. And I'm like, wow, that completely changes the game for you. So, it's important to have those conversations early on with someone like yourself, with someone like me, so they can really flesh out what are all your options. Because you're right, depending on what you're trying to do, there may be a myriad of options for you. For some, we are going to have those home buyers who are going to, in some situations, they may be putting down the absolute minimum that they can for financing. And
Right.
then there might be other situations where, like you said, we may say, hey, why don't you put down a little bit more here? I know you don't want to, but it's going to benefit you because of whatever reason, right?
Well, and just that, but then even the wisdom of being able to share with somebody saying, hey, I think if I buy a townhome, I'm actually going to be able to afford that a little bit easier. But most people forget that you may have to $300 to $500 a month in association dues that take you into a place where you might as well buy a single family home.
Right.
So those are even considerations. So there's 1,000 things out there that people don't realize that you and I may be able, and others like us, bring to the table to help people in their decision-making as we walk alongside of them in the journey to buying this house, because there's never been a time where logical thinking and really planning make more sense than it is today.
Oh, 100%. And you said, you mentioned earlier, the market right now dictates something maybe different than a market a couple of years ago did. And you're absolutely right when you say that right now, one of the ways of winning in a competitive market is that financing has to be strong, typically has to be strong. Now, don't get me wrong. I've won multiple offer scenarios for folks who are FHA 3.5% down or folks who are, conventional 5% down. However, stronger financing in lots of different ways, whether that be through your down payment, through your reserves, and certainly through the mortgage lender that you're using, because that relationship can tip the scales big time. When it's someone like yourself that I can say, hey, listen, as an agent, I can represent, hey, I have this relationship with this lender. They've done the due diligence. They're excellent communicators. They're going to show up when need be. They're going to be available versus, hey, somebody got a quote online from a company out in California and they don't know anything about anything, those are big considerations as well.
Well, absolutely. And I think the consideration of anything that's possible that's going to promote a success for the client is super important right now. And I think that everybody has lots of questions, and there's only so much you can get on the internet versus working with someone who's actually going to give you situational solutions, right? Because everything right now is very solution-based oriented. We have to come up with solutions that are going to allow you to buy without selling your house, or selling your house and then buy, or how do we find rental space for you until your house does sell? All these things come into play, and it's a very big part of the experience and the journey that you're going to go on. But the people that you're with are going to make it better. And here's even another little thing, just the smallest little things matter. And I think that you would agree with this, is that more times than not, I end up calling the listing agent just to validate the strength of the person who's buying the home, so they know with confidence, if they choose to make that choice for that contract, they know that, hey, I have talked to someone who has added some concrete evidence that demonstrates to me that this is a possibility.
Oh, yes. And I can tell you, I've appreciated that from you when representing my buyers. And then I can tell you, as a listing agent, I do the same thing. If I haven't heard from a lender, I will call them and find those things out. And when I can have a lender that tells me, hey, listen, I've done 3 transactions before with Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, and they're solid people. And, and even just those intangibles, like, hey, our kids play soccer together. They're real people, that goes a long way. I did want to touch on too, and I think what we'll do is we'll give Todd some homework this week, and he'll come back. Maybe
Great.
Todd can come back with some. I want to run some numbers and maybe just a couple of hypothetical scenarios. But I'll just touch on some things without specifics for right now. And that's conversations I've had with buyers where I have some buyers that will say, hey, Chris, we really, really, really want to put 20% down. And I'll say, okay, why is that? Of course, the answer in that scenario typically is, well, we don't want to pay PMI, private mortgage insurance. And I'll say, okay, well, and then we'll talk with the lender, right? And we'll say, okay, here's the limits. And I'll say, but take a look at what it would be like if you put 15% down. Yeah. How does that change your monthly payment? How does that change what you can afford on the purchase price? And a lot of times people are surprised, because they think, PMI is thousands and thousands of dollars. And you'll give us maybe some examples of what it might be depending on scenarios. But I can tell you just from experience, I'm sure you can as well. Again, the difference between PMI at 5% down payment versus PMI at 15 or 16 or 17% down payment is not only a big difference in the actual cost.
Yeah.
But then of course, you're so close to then at that point 20% equity that the length of time you have PMI is going to be much shorter.
Great.
Is that fair to say?
Very fair to say. I mean, again, that's the great interesting that people don't realize is that a mortgage is customized to their need. Not only can we adjust the percentage, but people don't realize that you can choose the term. You don't have to choose a 30 term. You can do 26 years, 23 years, 21 years, 18 years. It doesn't matter. So the reality is there's so much customization to this that no one has ever heard of or told, that we completely make it to the comfort of that person and what their need is, so they are paying the least amount of interest by the time it's all said and done.
That's another great point. You talk about the term, and I think what I see a lot of times happen, one of the biggest mistakes I see buyers make is they spend not nearly enough time exploring their options with the lender. As you're talking about, what does it look like if I do this term with this percent down? What if I go longer term, shorter term, more down, less down? And there's so many different options, and and we spend so much time sitting there on our phone looking at houses, right? And that's an important part of it too. But oh boy, if you don't really understand your lending options, you could be potentially costing yourself thousands and thousands of dollars.
Absolutely. So,
well, I'm looking forward to, I think what we'll do is I'll catch up with you, Todd, this week. We'll hold ourselves accountable here to our viewers and listeners. We'll come up with just a couple of concrete, scenarios to show folks maybe some of the dollar for dollar differences in these things that we're talking about. And we'll report back.
I can't wait. It's going to be a great one. That's for sure.
Excellent. Well, hey, Todd, you have a wonderful rest of
You
your
too.
week here. And everybody out there, make sure you continue to follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/Chris Grano, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those good places. Once again, if you have questions about these things, get in touch with Todd or myself. All of our contact information, as always, is in the show notes. And we will see you all next week on the Naperville Real Estate Weekly Market Update.
Bye, everybody.